Discuss the bill a little bit further is Senator Charles Wiger. Thanks for joining us on Capitol Report today.
Thank you very much.
Let's talk about this E-12 policy bill. The governor vetoed it. What are some of the provisions? You said you know that he's in favor of certain provisions. Which ones do you think you can still move ahead with here?
The governor absolutely supports the provisions addressing reading, and addressing literacy is a top priority of the Minnesota Senate. The House had agreed in the conference committee on provisions we had, as had the governor. We need to provide better preparation programs, more tools available for our teachers. And right now, at least 30% of students are struggling with reading, and getting to reasons that are causing that. One is that teachers need to be better prepared. We also need to have better early intervention programs, and we're working on that as well through earlier legislation that's passed. But one item that we all agreed to was the need for more tools available for teachers when they're in higher education. So we have some direction to the Board of Teaching to address that, so a variety of strategies are taught for teachers so that they can be optimally prepared to prepare students. If you're not literate, you're high risk, and we need to improve on that. Many states are also looking at similar legislation. And Connecticut, in fact, just passed a new rule that is going to have additional requirements for the teachers to make sure they're adequately prepared to teach reading.
And I was reading the conference committee report, and educating the educator, as you said, it seems to be a key theme in there, as well as accountability. Let's talk about some of the other provisions. The mandatory age requirement, you want students to remain in school until they're 18 years old. There was a lot of debate on both floors when this particular provision came up. What do you think was the deciding factor that allowed it to go through?
It's very costly to a student as well as to society if they do not finish school. A student is at high risk, and while there's a number of reasons why people do drop out, if we make it easy by saying you may exit at age 16, it does not send the right message. Minnesota would join with a number of other states, 22 or so, that would say you have to graduate high school or you're stay in school until you're 18. Now it's at 16. That's too easy. You can get out by just getting the parent to agree.
And some of the criticism was exactly that. When do you take away the parent's right to choose? I mean, if the kid isn't getting it, he might not be getting it. Maybe there's a different way to educate that particular student. So where do you find that balance between what should be done in the home, what should be a parent's decision, versus what should be the decision of the legislature?
Well, the parent is the #1 educator of students, and the role of the parent is crucial for the success, and that is usually a common denominator for how well a student will do, is the backing that they get at home. That said, we do not support just saying pull out of school, exiting out of the system. There's homeschool options, of course, and the homeschool participants tend to do very well. But that's not the same as dropping out, of course. Dropping out puts a student at high risk, and I think that was the key message, that you need to stay in school or you're not going to have a very good chance of succeeding. And it's very costly to society as well. The lost earning powers for that person by not completing school is significant.
Sure. So I want to go a little bit into, where do you think the legislature's role is in trying to promote education as opposed to the federal role and the district role? So, some states opt for district control, some really take the federal approach. We seem to be taking more of a statewide approach. Is it working, and what do you think our role is?
Okay. The care, control, and management of the school district is vested in the local school board. There's approximately 340 school boards, school districts across the state. We support the power that they have. At the same time, the funding primarily comes through the state. A significant part of our budget is for education, and you can see in the current budget talks where even the governor had said that that would be off the table for making cuts in education. But with the funding that we provide to schools, we also have expectations. It's not a blank check, and so that gives rise to the standards that we have, and there needs to be accountability. We have set forth in statute those expectations we have. I think at the federal level, of course, through No Child Left Behind, they have put in a number of requirements. That needs to be changed.
And I wanted to approach that real briefly. We're running out of time here, but I have a lot of friends and family members who are educators, and they think it's getting to the point where there's so much paperwork involved, so much accountability involved, that they're losing their ability to teach. Your response to that?
I would agree that there is too much paperwork, and we need to trim back on the paperwork that is not necessary. We have sent a number of recommendations to our congressional delegation on No Child Left Behind. We've sent the message so far, get this repaired. And we're going to have a new administration in 2009, and if the responsible changes, and we've put a number of these items together, if they aren't done, then I'll be a strong voice to say, let's pull out. But
and we're actually, I'm sorry, we're out of time, but I have to ask you real quickly on the bill that you rework here. Will Minnesota, being the hockey state, be a part of the new bill, real quickly?
Yes, it will.
Okay. Thanks so much, Senator Wiger. We'll see how this bill progresses through the rest of the session. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you very much.
In a show of bipartisan support, an omnibus ag and veterans bill was signed into law. It contains many provisions, but the overall goal is trying to move Minnesota ahead in ag programs and veterans affairs. The governor says this legislation is in line with Minnesota taking care of its own.
Our veterans and members of the military lay it all on the line for us, and we can never repay them for what they have done on behalf of our state and our nation, but we need to do all that we can to make sure that we continue to remember their sacrifice and their service. This is yet another step in that progression. Our goal is to make Minnesota the most veteran-friendly state in the nation.
From more biodiesel in our fuel to more protection for military members and their families, the Omnibus Agriculture and Veterans Bill hosts a variety of provisions. Here to outline some of those key provisions is Senator Jim Vickerman. Senator, thanks for joining us on Capitol Report today.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here.
Why don't we begin with some of those ag provisions that were incorporated into this bill, including, there's some funding for the control and eradication of bovine tuberculosis. There's the tiered increment of biodiesel fuel. What do you consider some of the most important key elements for our viewers to know about?
Well, if you're looking at the ag, it's the bovine tuberculosis treatment. We have to stop that. One of the most important things that we've done in ag this year, put $5 million in there to buy out the herds. The reason I say that, we want to be sure it doesn't go any further south than it is. You get into dairy and all that, it's bad.
For the sake of our viewers, we should explain that bovine tuberculosis is passed on from deer to cattle.
It can be passed on from deer to cattle. It can be passed from cattle to cattle. It's the saliva that gets on the grass or on the hay, and the next one picks it up. And what it does, it shrinks their lungs, and it shrinks this body part down.
Deadly.
It's pretty hard to, if you've ever been up northern Minnesota, and I go up there hunting a lot, you don't just walk out and round up the cows. They're out in the trees, so it's quite a adventure. But this year we were able to put money in to buy out a herd. We want to buy out the herd. You got to get rid of the cattle. That's the only way it's going to be. They're shooting lots of deer, but you'll never get rid of all the deer because they hide behind the trees.
So the idea is to start fresh, buy everything out, and then when it's eradicated, just let people start rebuilding their herds?
But there's it's easy to sit here and say, we'll just buy out the herds, but remember, there's no income coming into those farmers for 2, 3, 4 years that they can't put cattle back on. So the buyout sounds good, but the extra income's not going to be there.
And now, for the sake of all of us who drive vehicles, we want to know more about this biodiesel fuel tiered increment. How is that going to affect us, especially with high gas prices?
Well, I'll answer that real quickly. We're getting blamed ethanol for raising food prices, but just imagine if you think gas now is high, take the ethanol away, you could maybe put $1 back on there. So it could be higher. You have to look at the environment. That's the main thing we want to do. And the reason we said I was the first one to carry the ethanol bill years ago, and it was to raise the price of corn from $1.25 up to a decent price. I'll admit it's getting probably too high now, but that'll change. That'll come down.
And you just spoke real briefly about the environment. Let's talk about this this provision in there saying local governments need to start having comprehensive plans for development that incorporate the environment and habitat preservation. Why did you decide to throw this out there now?
Well, Senator Dill's been carrying that bill for quite a while, and I think it makes sense. They're gobbling up farmland that shouldn't be developed. But the hard part of that is there are some people that are getting older. If they have a chance to sell their property for a big chunk of money, I feel kind of bad saying, no, you can't do that. So I think the bill, what it does is just tells them to step back a little bit and let's work on this and let's do something that makes some common sense for both parties.
Okay, let's move on to that veteran side of things. One of the provisions that I noticed was it was more protection for family members if they want to go and visit their family member who is currently deployed or in training. Why did you feel this was necessary? Was this a problem?
Well, it is. Can be a problem.
With their employers, I should stipulate.
Yeah, but I will say this: I don't know of an employer that wouldn't let a family member take a few days. I'd have to look hard to find somebody that would be that mean or that cruel. But we just put it in there and use it up to 6 days.
6 days of unpaid,
Yeah,
but
sure.
and you don't need to use your vacation. I guess that's
Right.
the primary portion of that provision. So again, did people come to you and say, you know, we think this is necessary, or did you throw it in just for good
Well,
measure?
I just think that the committee that I chair thought it was necessary, so we put it in there.
Okay.
You have to remember that sometimes you have to go to another state when employees, when they come back here in deployment, and it's not easy when you have your, you know, now we're getting into a different situation where we have females and males, mothers and I shouldn't say grandmothers, mothers for sure, that have to change their lifestyle. So I think it's a good thing, and as I said before, I don't think there's a business that wouldn't give them time off.
Explain to me the provision that also helps protect businesses of military members who are deployed. How does that work?
Well, if they're deployed and they come back, they still have their business. Now, if they're into like foreclosure or something like that, we still give them time. So it's a safety net for those that come back, and so they can serve our country and not sit and worry when I go home, will there be a house or will there be a big debt I can't handle? And we run it by the Justice Department, and they said it's fine. We can work with that.
Now, the governor did sign this bill. He called it a good bill. Do you think this is an example of how bipartisan leaders can work together and present something that works for Minnesotans?
Well, I've been lucky the last 2 years. We've had bills before the governor. I have a different philosophy than a lot of people. We're all together. I don't play politics with any veterans issues, and I think that's the reason that it moved ahead.
Okay. Senator Vickerman, thanks for joining us today on Capitol Report. We really appreciate your time.
It's my pleasure to be here.
The governor's been busy signing many bills into law and giving others the veto stamp. This concludes another Capitol Report from all of us here at Senate Media Services. I'm Julie Barkey. Thanks for watching.